everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Shista if you are new here. Well, today we're talking about a subject that is a little bit taboo in the homeschool community, and that is unschooling. Now, before we get off into what unschooling is, let's discuss what unschooling is not. So, unschooling is not school at home. And when I say that, I am talking about replicating the public school system in a home environment. When I began homeschooling my children, the first thing I did was to replicate exactly what I had been a part of, and that was the traditional schooling. So I, of course, bought the books, I got a bell, I had desk, I had all of that. I had the mindset of what school was based on my attendance of school. But at the end of that day, I clearly remembered being frustrated. I remember being upset and crying. And guess what? So were my children, because what worked for me was not working for them. I did not know any other way than what I had learned. And so I had nothing else to go by. So all I could do was cry out to God and say, help me, because you wanted me to do this. You wanted me to homeschool these kids. What do I do now? Because clearly this isn't working for me. I felt like a failure on that very first day of school. I felt like maybe I did not hear God correctly. I felt like maybe I was just out of my mind to even take on this responsibility. I felt defeated. And that is a feeling that no parent wants to ever feel when it comes to raising their kids and training their kids in the way they should go. So I clearly remember that sometime later that week, or however it was, that I decided to take my children out to the bookstore. The bookstore was a place for us to just relax, have fun. My kids would explore and look at books, and it gave me time to look at books and resources and things like that. Well, on this day, I remember finding a book that I was just completely surprised to see. And this book was called, and I have it here, The Unschooling Handbook, How to Use the Whole World as Your Child's Classroom. Now that book was a game changer for me. When I saw the title, it intrigued me. And so began my journey into unschooling. Now, when I say my journey into unschooling, it was exactly that, a journey. For me, it was not something that I easily adapted to. But I began soaking myself into this book because it brought so much freedom from within. It brought so much freedom to us. And when I saw that the whole world can be our classroom, that's when the chains of confinement start breaking off. Now, what I did was not easy. What I did is not what everybody's supposed to do. It was what was right for me and my family at that time. So here we are out in the world exploring, right? And a lot of times it was exploring in our backyard, or exploring it at the park, or exploring at a museum. It was giving my children the freedom to be and to learn. But that wasn't quite enough, right? It's kind of hard to let go and let God. But I knew that this was what we were supposed to do at that time. And so I kept doing what we were called to do. So unschooling was a test of faith. Everything that I was supposed to do, was supposed to be done. Everything that my children learned and received from that was through unschooling. I had to let go of what everybody else thought. I had to let go of all of what I was taught, and I had to trust God in the journey. When you are called to do something that is different from everyone else, it's always going to be hard. It's always going to be difficult because you always feel like you are being compared, or you're comparing yourself to them. Well, I did that. I would compare my children to other children. But there was something I started doing that changed it for me. So unschooling was definitely something we were supposed to do, and that was great and that was good. We were not confined to the four walls or to the tradition of traditional schooling, but I started journaling. Now, I don't know exactly when I decided to do this or how it came about, but I needed to see that my children were learning. And when I say I needed to see, journaling provided that. So every night before I went to bed, I wrote down my day. I wrote down everything that we did. I had each child's name written and what that particular child did. And so when I did that, I put the subjects beside those things that they had done. So for instance, if we were in the kitchen and we had to do, we were doing a recipe, I made sure that I was a part of that, in the sense of I had to count with my children. We talked about fractions. We talked about this. We talked about what a half cup, a third cup, a fourth cup. We talked about what all of that was. And so I would put math beside that. If we did a read aloud and I, asked one of them to read, guess what? I put down reading beside that. So every single day I journaled our lives and put the subjects next to what we did. And that showed me that my children were learning. Now, how did I go from unschooling to unit studies? Studies came along, and it was introduced to me by a friend of mine who actually gave me my very first curriculum, and that curriculum was Konos. And Konos is a video that I did, and if you have not seen that, I will link that below. But as I looked at that book, like it was a huge book, I still didn't tackle unit studies right away. That book scared me because it looked like a phone book. So I won't go into the details of Konos, but I will tell you that as I looked closely at it, and it took me a while to really look closely at it, I found it to be such a natural way to transition from unschooling to schooling. I still at this time don't associate traditional learning with unit studies, because in traditional learning everything is kind of chopped up. You have math, science, English, geography, world history, everything is divided. But in unit studies it was not, and so that was a great thing because it was the ease of it. And then I was able to teach all of my children at once. So it gave us an opportunity to start exploring purposely, right? It gave us the opportunity to do that. So now we transitioned from unschooling to unit studies. It didn't mean that my children still could not explore and learn, but it did mean that At this time, I had 4 kids, and I needed to kind of rein it in and start looking at, they're getting older, and there are certain things they have to be taught in order to graduate. And that began my journey into unit studies. So, unschooling was a foundation for us. It was the foundation for us. It allowed me time to basically de-school not only my children, but myself. It helped us to look at things outside of the box, and it helped us to grow by leaps and bounds. Were there times that I thought this was not going to work? Yes, but I had to hang on to the fact that I was supposed to do it. So all of my children learned to read. I taught them to read. All of my children graduated. They're all doing what God is leading them to do. And I wouldn't change a thing. So if you are interested in unschooling, do your research. You have so much more than I had way back then. There's so much at your fingertips. Do your research. Look into unschooling, look into de-schooling, look into unit studies. And if this is not for you, it's okay. Look into whatever it is you believe you're supposed to be doing with your kids. Because that's what it's all about, right? That's what unschooling, that's what homeschooling is about. It's about enjoying the journey, raising your children to be what they're supposed to be, and living that life that you wouldn't really get if it was inside the 4 walls. So thank you so much for joining me. If you enjoyed this video, I would appreciate it if you shared, like, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.